Have you ever heard the claim that a royal corpse once exploded inside its coffin, showering mourners with the smell, and sometimes the sight, of decay? It sounds like tabloid gossip, or perhaps an exaggerated medieval legend, but it is in fact a well-documented phenomenon. Before the era of modern embalming, royal funerals were high-risk affairs. Behind the velvet drapes and gold-plated coffins, the same biological processes that affect every human body were quietly at work, and when those processes met the sealed, pressurized environment of an ornate coffin, the results could be catastrophic. In the early medieval period, royal deaths were political events. Kings and queens were displayed for days, sometimes weeks, before burial. This allowed subjects to pay their respects, but it also meant the body remained in public view far longer than was safe without refrigeration. Embalming techniques between the 9th and 12th centuries were rudimentary, relying on evisceration, the removal of internal organs, and the packing of the torso with aromatic herbs, resins, and sometimes quicklime. While this slowed decay, it was not foolproof. If the embalming was incomplete or rushed, especially during summer deaths, gases from decomposition could still build up inside the remaining tissues. Royal coffins, often lined with lead and sealed tightly to protect the body from tampering, ironically created the perfect environment for pressure to build inside the corpse and, eventually, inside the coffin itself. One of the earliest and most infamous cases comes from William I of England, better known as William the Conqueror, who died in Rouen, France, in September 1087 after suffering internal injuries from a riding accident. The delay between his death and burial was unusually long, about 3 weeks, due to political disputes and logistical issues. By the time his body reached the Abbey of Saint-Ouen in Caen, it had already begun to decompose severely. Chronicler Orderic Vitoli's records that when attendants attempted to place William's corpse into a stone sarcophagus, it was too swollen to fit. As they tried to force the body inside, the abdominal cavity burst open from the pressure, releasing a stench so overwhelming that the funeral had to be cut short and mourners fled the church. This was not the result of some mysterious curse, it was the straightforward chemistry of decomposition, bacteria breaking down soft tissue, producing gases like methane and hydrogen sulfide, which have nowhere to escape in a sealed corpse. By the late Middle Ages, religious orders in Europe began experimenting with different embalming methods, often influenced by reports from the Middle East where preservation techniques were more advanced. Some royals were immersed in wine or spirits, a method believed to both preserve the body and sanctify it. Others were coated in wax or wrapped in layers of linen soaked in aromatic oils. These methods, however, carried risks of their own. Alcohol immersion could delay decomposition, but if the liquid did not penetrate deeply into tissues, bacteria still thrived internally. Wax coatings trapped moisture inside the body, inadvertently increasing the risk of internal gas buildup. While not every royal burial ended in catastrophe, the combination of unventilated coffins, lengthy funeral rites, and seasonal heat made the danger persistent. In July 1559, Henry II of France died after a jousting accident. His funeral was delayed for elaborate ceremonies. The embalming was performed by surgeons of the royal court, but the summer heat accelerated decay. His body was displayed publicly for days before being sealed in a lead coffin, and contemporary accounts hint at swelling and discoloration during the viewing period. While there is no recorded explosion at his funeral, later exhumation reports suggest that internal pressure had distorted the body's shape inside the coffin, a silent warning of what could happen. By the Elizabethan era, it had become fashionable for European monarchs to be interred in lead-lined coffins within ornate wooden casings. The lead served as both a physical barrier against grave robbers and a symbol of status, but lead coffins were airtight. Once sealed, any gases produced by the decomposing body could not escape. If embalming was incomplete, the pressure would continue to build, sometimes causing the coffin itself to bulge or rupture months or years later, discoveries often made during reburials or renovations. In October 1760, King George II of Great Britain died suddenly from an aortic aneurysm. His embalming was performed quickly, but according to later reports from Westminster Abbey staff, the body swelled dramatically during the days before burial. While there is no verified record of an explosion at his funeral, Abbey workers noted that certain royal coffins from this period were prone to distemper, a polite euphemism for gas expansion and leakage inside sealed caskets. The most gruesome evidence of coffin explosions comes from the French Revolution, when mobs exhumed royal remains from the Basilica of Saint Denis in 1793. Many of the bodies had been embalmed decades earlier and sealed in lead coffins. When revolutionary workers pried these coffins open, they encountered sudden releases of putrid gas, sometimes accompanied by partial ruptures of bloated corpses. Some coffins were corroded or deformed from internal pressure alone, a testament to the relentless work of decomposition gases over time. By the 19th century, medical science had a much clearer understanding of decomposition. Physicians like Jean-Nicolas Ganel in France began publishing detailed studies on embalming chemistry, identifying anaerobic bacteria, microorganisms that thrive without oxygen, as key culprits in gas production inside sealed bodies. Embalmers began using arsenic, mercury, and later formaldehyde to neutralize bacterial activity. These methods drastically reduced the risk of post-burial explosions, though they brought serious health hazards for the embalmers themselves. After death, enzymes within the body begin to break down tissues, and bacteria in the intestines release gases as they digest organic matter. In an unventilated coffin, particularly one made of metal or lined with lead, these gases accumulate. If the abdomen remains intact, pressure can build to the point where the skin and internal structures can no longer contain it. When disturbed, during the funeral, later movement, or coffin opening, this pressure can release violently, rupturing the body and sometimes damaging the coffin. While this phenomenon was not exclusive to royalty, their burial customs increased the risk. Royals were often buried in airtight coffins, subjected to long public displays before burial, embalmed inconsistently depending on political urgency or religious rules, and interred in warm, enclosed spaces like churches or crypts, which maintained stable but decomposition-friendly temperatures. Today, royal funerals are managed with precision. Bodies are embalmed with modern chemicals, cooled until burial, and placed in coffins designed to control moisture and pressure. Lead coffins are still sometimes used for tradition, but they are combined with internal lining systems to prevent gas buildup. Queen Elizabeth II, for example, was buried in a lead-lined coffin, but her preservation followed strict modern protocols that make medieval hazards a thing of the past. The idea of a royal body exploding in its coffin might sound like sensational gossip, but it is rooted in centuries of recorded incidents. From William the Conqueror's infamous funeral to the upheavals of the French Revolution, the combination of biology, ceremony, and sealing technology created the perfect recipe for posthumous disaster. It is a reminder that beneath the crowns, jewels, and centuries of tradition, kings and queens are subject to the same natural processes as any other human being, and in the days before refrigeration and modern embalming, those processes could not always be contained. If you found this deep dive into royal funeral mishaps fascinating, share it with someone who enjoys the stranger side of history, and keep exploring the hidden details of the past.